Tesla executive Lars Moravy was interviewed by Top Gear, and he had a lot to share about their decisions on the revised Model Y. As the best-selling car in the world, they made both trade-offs and bold moves to make sure it's successful. We'll watch that interview today. In the meantime, electric vehicle maker Lucid is not doing so well. Its CEO Peter Rawlinson is no longer CEO and is now transitioning to the role of strategic technical advisor to the board. Lucid's fiscal year 2025 guidance is for 20,000 cars versus 14,700 expected, but they're still bleeding money with a net loss of $400 million for the quarter. Brian White here with us. Brian knows a lot about the new Model Y, and he knows a lot about Lucid. He's been predicting what all this was going to happen. You had lots of Lucid fans hating on you, but welcome, Brian.
Boy, did I. Yes, good to be here. 2 years ago, I had a accidental bit of luck when I was able to interview one of their executives by the side of the road in front of the factory, and I published my results. I published my findings, and the outlook was pretty grim. And of course, many Lucid investors back then were just convinced that no, Tesla's the one going to zero. Lucid is going to be the new Tesla, but better. And I tried to explain that the pieces were missing. There were too many missing pieces to make it happen. And here we are. It's in penny stock territory, and I am not concerned for the company. I am concerned for the shareholders, as I have been all along.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that comment and the deep dive you did with Lucid. But you also understand and did a deep dive in the new Model Y. This one's looking good. Lars Moravy was interviewed by Top Gear, and this Model Y is going to be very successful, it looks like. Top Gear gave them a very good review. Night and day better than the old one. We'll watch that interview here. Tesla Model Y review to give them an 8 out of 10. World's best-selling car gets a serious update in the second generation, but it isn't enough to keep it at the top of the charts. The good stuff, the ride, the steering, the comfort and efficiency all improve. Slicker fashion sense makes the old one feel like it's made of wood. The bad stuff, strangely more generic than before. Interior tech still sometimes feel like style over substance. This is what it looked like. Obviously, I'm going to go ahead and play, and we'll pause it whenever you want me to pause it, okay?
I wanted to ask you a couple of things about the new Model Y, because you had a lot to do with Cybertruck, but that's kind of a rock star car. What's different about trying to improve on what is the world's best-selling car? It's got to be harder.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that racks your mind, but when you sell a lot of cars, like over 1 million cars, 1.2 million cars worldwide, obviously you did a lot of things right? Like with Cybertruck, we could do whatever we wanted because no one knew what it was going to be and we could decide, but you don't want to break the recipe that people love so much.
Yeah.
And so like when you're engineering that and you're kind of doing your sort of mental process of like trying to figure out what to change, what to analyze, it's like super hard because you just get stuck sometimes in this analysis paralysis of like, oh, but that was great and everyone loved it, so I'm not going to change it. And everything from like little things like, steering response to like even just how the door opens or, where the we put the stalk back where the stalk is, or do we keep the shifting? It's like all these little things that add up to a great experience matter. And when you're trying to make those decisions with a bunch of engineers who only want to make it better, and you're the guy who's trying to balance it.
It's like one of those puzzles where you have to shift the tiles around.
Yeah, it's all the tiles, and then hopefully it still says 1 through 15 at the end,
So what would be one of the biggest things that you wanted to address initially that you thought, right, this is definitely something that we need to have a go at?
I mean, I think you mentioned it when we first met, but like we always knew Model Y would be like a great family car. Yeah. But Tesla's always made fast cars. We make sporty cars. They look sporty, they're sharp, and I think we wanted to really give, especially the second row occupants, in vis-a-vis the front row, like just a better driving experience and riding experience, really, just like.
Yeah.
So we needed to improve the comfort of the vehicle, but we also had to maintain the sort of agileness that Tesla has become. We don't want to get rid of that and just make a Buick or floaty,
a big sponge.
Yeah, that's like not our style, and so that was really difficult to do. We had to do a lot of first principles engineering to improve the ride aspect without decreasing the response, and I think we did a pretty good job at that. And then on top of that, you layer in sort of like when you're riding in a car, the feeling isn't just like your butt. It's also how you feel like around the sound and the psychoacoustics of it. And so we did a lot with NVH and impact noise to try and bring that down. And I think the result's pretty great. I think you're going to love it. You know, I love driving it still, and you know, I'm a big car guy. You know, I kind of love cars. I like driving cars. But you know, it's definitely going to be better for families. I think both second row seat and just how it rides and feels in the utility.
Did you hear, Brian, that that they actually improved the cabin noise too much, like too little noise? They might have to fix it. Some people are just complaining it's too quiet. It's like, what?
I'm not familiar with that concept. There are one of the things that you can see from the back end of the car that's a big improvement. I was talking with a body shop guy who said that the problem is if you get a Honda bumped in the back of your Model Y, they're going to hit basically the entire hatch. And that is an expensive piece to repair. Now the back bumper has a piece of black plastic at bumper height that sticks out a good 1.5 to 2 inches that is designed to take the impact rather than right there. You can see that lip. That lip is is a sacrificial piece. The black plastic there is what's going to get the impact rather than the vehicle itself. And if you do get hit on the painted part, you'll see that it is no longer a single piece that goes all the way up to the C-pillars. It is one piece at the bottom, and then there are the spoiler is a separate piece, and the bit that goes from the roof down to the trunk lid is a separate piece still up at the top there. So there is repairability has gotten better because it's not just about the product we sell, it's about the product that you own. And that is what you would see there. Now on this picture, I can see a panel gap where the trunk lid doesn't line up perfectly to the roof line. I did not see that on any of the actual production vehicles. And I looked, the engineering is tight. These are better built than the Charger Daytona EV that I saw at the auto show in Portland last week. That was sloppy. It was a real mess, that car. And these are great. And it is a balancing act. How do you, there is no best car. There is no perfect car. There is which aspects we're going to optimize. And we do still want it to be a fun drive, but we also want it to be comfortable. You've got to balance it out. And I feel that they did a fantastic job of doing that. I don't need the sporty performance, but I know that others do. And if you're trying to build a car for everyone, you have to consider all those things, and making it in that way is difficult, and it just looks good.
The reason my wife, when we had our young children, really wanted a Toyota minivan is because not only the ride height, which the Model Y gives you, that high ride height, but it felt like she's driving a normal car. It didn't feel like she was driving this big lunky thing. And that's why she loved the minivan. And that's what this is. So even if it's responsive, but yet you have the room, people love it. All right, let's continue watching.
Sometimes that is the limiter. It's like, is this change going to be felt in the first 100 feet? Or like because you get in the test drive, you're driving it out of the store. And if you don't make an impression that someone says, wow, like, that you've already lost them. And like, sometimes we use that as the barometer, So
the interesting thing for me was that immediately the suspension feels a lot softer, but not necessarily less taut.
Yeah.
So how have you got it to be both softer and not floppy?
Yeah, I mean,
that's a difficult thing to do.
It's a difficult thing to do. And it's like the trade-off, especially with passive systems. The Model Y isn't adaptive damping like we have on S and X or Cybertruck. But like, one of the things we tried to focus on in that sense was, okay, let's start at the source of the problem. You start with the tire. It's got all new tires.
Yeah.
And once you have a good foundation with the tire, we increase or decrease the rolling resistance, which generally takes away from handling, but through compound and sidewall iteration, we're actually make a more compliant tire.
So are they getting better? The tires getting better and more suited to you as they go along?
Yeah, we've been developing tires since, Model S with our suppliers, but like, we know so much more in the tech, and like the tech we put in our tires is crazy. This has new tread compound on the Michelin Pilot Sports here. And it was meant to make the rolling plushness better, right? Because you get that tactile feel just in the first 100 feet. But to do that, you have to soften the tread, which is counteractive to rolling resistance, which wants a really stiff tread. So we actually have multiple tread compounds across the tire. and the balance of getting all that right, and then reducing the vertical compliance of the tire to just absorb those little nibbles
Yeah.
a little bit, gives you a better foundation. Once you have that foundation, you go into suspension design, and having done the old Model Y, like we kind of knew the weak points. You know, when you're developing a car, you get a year or two maybe to like go through all of it, but then you got to go to production.
Yeah.
We're here at, you know, Gigafactory Berlin. It's just started production of the new Model Y on Monday. Andre just told me we were up to like 450 cars in the first 2 days, so that's pretty good rate to start off with. But you know, like you have those constraints of the factory and what they can do, and so you have to kind of get into production. And like when we were able to do it again, we had all the constraints at the beginning. We knew where we could push and where we could pull. So we really focus on, you know, grounding ourselves. Okay, let's increase the body stiffness where we know it's weak. Torsional stiffness of this car is up 5-10%. Connection point stiffness at any given point can be up as much as 20%. And that coupled with the tire means, okay, now I've got a better foundation at the body, got a better foundation at the tire, and that means the suspension can do its job.
You've got something solid to push from, and then
And
the
to pull on,
suspension's
yeah.
doing all the things it wants to do.
So you get to then we get, okay, now we can make the suspension work more. And then we go into kinematics and we say, okay, we want a little more compliance. So we focus on reducing the parasitics or the bushings. And then you change the kinematics so you absorb some more mechanically, slow down the steering ratio just a little bit on center.
See, that's counterintuitive to keeping your Tesla sporty feeling, but it feels much better as a driving experience for a driver
Yeah,
for this kind
you would
of
say
car.
like, well, why did you slow down the steering?
Yeah.
Well, we wanted predictability. And sometimes a sporty feeling isn't just about being quick. It's about being predictable and linear and progressive in the build so you know what's going to happen. And I think, you know, it's still a fast steering ratio. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like we went to 20-1 and you got the super slow rate. Like, you know, it's still about 11. It was 11-1, maybe it's 12.5-1 now. Like overall, on center has gone up maybe just, you know, 1 because we have sort of variable steering ratio. But you get that connection. And then I think we did a really much better job instead of masking it with you know, the effort build and the assist. We actually like really tried to make that progression much more linear.
Hang on. He just said we have variable steering.
I didn't catch that, but
I think
Yeah.
he just said we have variables. So having driven it just yesterday, I can tell you it felt normal. There wasn't anything unusual about it. There's no learning curve like with a Cybertruck where you have to understand that it's a different system. The driving felt very natural, very normal, very intuitive. But it's interesting what he was saying.
They slowed it down. That's what he said. They slowed
Yeah.
down this.
Yeah. And imperceptibly, it's 10% different.
Yeah.
But the important thing there is these engineers are very, very smart. I haven't seen their IQ tests. I don't know if they're geniuses, but they're very, very good at what they do. And the idea that you would be able to tighten up the entire frame and just let the suspension handle it instead of dealing with the whole body rolling or swaying is smart, but difficult. It is challenging. It is expensive. So that is, that is all great stuff. If you'd like to continue it, you can.
No, like you said, he's incredibly. It's not just that they're geniuses and they're smart; they care, and so they're really thinking about every single little component, like what is the actual feel, and they have knowledge of because it's vertically integrated. Every part of the car, they can make trade-offs easily or much more thoughtfully. So I thought that was very interesting that he said that. Looking like he said that Berlin is already producing Model Ys and they're on their way. This is going to be a massive sales. It's looking really good at this point. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to Lucid on their side. You know, we want these electric vehicle companies to succeed, and it's not easy. And this is one company that, you know, they're getting the funding, but they can't seem to turn the corner. They're only producing if they're lucky, we'll see the numbers, but there's like 11,000 cars in a year, and they're going to get to 20,000 cars next year. So anyways, Peter Rawlinson is stepping down as Lucid CEO. So that was a bit of a shock. He's going to be this role of strategic technical advisor to the chairman of the board, which is like a nothing role. And interim CEO is going to be the chief operating officer, Mark Winteroff, and it's an interim CEO. So they're actually still searching for a new CEO. So this reeks of, you know, a Saudi decision to get him out and move on and not having an actual replacement for him yet. So obviously this is coming after the fourth quarter results, not good. That's, you know, so they announced the CEO transition, basically everything I just said now. So they've initiated a search to identify Lucid's next CEO. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it real quick. This situation is unusual for the CEO to step down right before an earnings call with no replacement lined up is unusual. Well, if the COO was going to be stepping into the CEO role, if it was not interim, I would say this feels like a reasonably normal succession, but it doesn't. It doesn't. He's filling in, so that is unusual. And he's staying on board so that the people who like him can say that, oh, he's still there. But I don't know what kind of technical advisor role that would be. I don't know what wisdom he has to impart in that role, and I don't know if he knows. I'm sure there's it's advisory, it's suggestions, I'm sure, but it is pretty clear that his leadership has been not ideal. He may have been very good at running a design team for Formula E racing, but that clearly does not translate. And if you look at those earnings, if you were to take the revenue per vehicle, and really all of their revenue is on vehicle sales, and divide it by the sales last quarter, their average revenue is $78,000. That's after you include all the premium trims, after you include the handful of Sapphires they've sold. $78,000. What are you selling these cars for? Because they're more than $78,000. They're like, I think 80. And are you giving them away? Are you giving deep discounts we don't see? Is it all being eaten up on leasing deals or something? I'm not sure where that,
your point
where
being
that
that
goes.
even though it's a premium price point, like really expensive, they still can't be profitable. And so,
well, that is also my point. But my point is, even with the premium pricing, there are people who are getting these at ridiculous discounts and they still can't sell them. The Gravity looks very promising. I think it's a good looking car. I think it's going to be successful, but it doesn't look like they've sold any of them to anyone other than employees. These are not out in the real world yet. And to call the earnings disappointing, I'm sorry, but I don't know what anyone expected other than what we saw. Until they can get to a mass market vehicle and we start seeing them all on the road every day, I think the only thing the earnings could be is disappointing, unless we see them start, fixing their spending problem, which is something they don't appear terribly interested in doing.
At 11,000 produced per quarter, they're just not high enough to get to scale to reduce, to really take advantage of the factories and so forth.
Well, 11,000 a quarter. Yeah, they're not doing that.
Yeah, they're not even doing that. So Lucid just reported Q4 revenue of $234 million, up 49% year over year. That's great. The company had a net loss, though, of $397 million in the quarter. That's compared to $653 million net loss. Lucid expects to produce 20,000 vehicles in 2025. So here they are. They produced 3,300. Oh, so I was even wrong. I thought it was 11,000. It was 9,000 vehicles in 2024. So they produced 9,000 vehicles in total of 2024. They delivered 10,000 vehicles in 2024. Q4 revenue, as I mentioned already, annual revenue about $807 million. GAAP net loss, though, ended the quarter approximately $6 billion in total liquidity. How much longer will they last? And then you've got their guidance is 20,000. That's what they're hoping to do. And I think, didn't you tell me that was the same guidance that they had for 2024 and they only had 11,000? So
they were I don't remember now what it was, but I want to say it was about it might have even been more than 20,000 had been their original guidance for last year, and it just isn't happening. How are you going to double sales next year? The cars aren't changing. Are you going to sell the same number of sedans, but an equal number of Gravities? Maybe. I hope so. I don't see it happening. I do not know how you double your sales in the next year if you're Lucid. What can you do? You've tried dropping the price. It doesn't work. You've tried making fancier models like the Sapphire. It doesn't work. Maybe it's expanding into new markets, but even those would be challenging. That's a lot of units to move, and getting into a new market is expensive and difficult and a logistical headache.
Okay, a few more things that's interesting. Gary Black, a Future Fund, said this: Lucid stock actually jumped after hours after they announced that he was leaving. So that tells you something. Maybe it's because of the production guidance, but come on, it's mostly because they left them. Separately, founder and CEO Peter Rawlinson is stepping aside as CEO, right? Okay. So this is their numbers. We just talked about it. He goes, it's highly unusual for a CEO to step down amicably before earnings and not be given an opportunity to provide a farewell in the earnings call. So if it was amicable, they would have said something, let him say goodbye on the earnings call. Rawlinson is staying on as technical advisor to chairman of the board, but effective immediately is no longer involved in day-to-day operations. A little weird. When they're searching for a permanent CEO in the interim, if that's unusual, if he's capable of remaining in the role of CEO, why not keep him there for a while until you got the new CEO? So his opinion, either there's a medical reason for Rawlinson stepping down or a personal issue arose that caused him not to be able to continue as CEO until a new CEO was selected.
It could be. I hadn't considered the medical angle. Go ahead.
Yeah. And there's a fun article here, November 2021. I'm sure you did your video on it. Elon Musk's former chief engineer is obsessed with beating Tesla. They're besting Tesla. Here's how Lucid could become the next electric car juggernaut. Well, didn't happen.
It turns out it's difficult. And I loved the hubris of his statement that, well, Tesla had production hell and we've never had that and we never will. Also, you won't have production, right? Maybe you should have had production hell. It's possible that in terms of medical procedures, I believe he has a stick stuck somewhere that may need to be surgically removed. But I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, Herbert. I'm not a doctor.
All right.
True
Let's
story.
move on. Excuse me. Okay. There you go.
Here you go.
You got the best selling vehicle in the world, not just electric vehicle with the Model Y. Then they've just improved it. And you can see the obsession that Tesla has, the full integration. They're making it better. They're making it lower cost, right? Didn't you just tell me also that the new Model Y is cheaper to produce than the old Model Y?
Yes.
So that's crazy, crazy. And it's so much better in so many ways. In the meantime, we're unfortunately continuing to pair these stories with other car companies struggling. This was what was reported with Q4 earnings for Lucid. So hopefully they'll find a way to get through this. Thank you very much, Brian. Check him out. If you want to see his deep dive on Lucid a couple of years ago, go to his channel, FutureAza. He has these amazing videos you won't find anywhere else. He really does care. And he dives deep, just like Tesla cares. They dive deep. Thank you, Brian. Follow him on FutureAza. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.